Don't listen to the boomers, Gen Z. You're doing all right. Hey guys, what's going on? Hermdo back with you, and today I want to talk about Gen Z. Instead of the usual doom and gloom about how society has screwed them over and how they're the new lost generation, how everything's just messed up for them and how they have no hope, I want to discuss some positive things about Gen Z, mainly focusing on their approach to work. I know it might not mean much coming from a guy that's going to be 40 next year. I can already hear you guys calling me Unk, but that's okay. I'm not cool anymore. I'm lame. I used to listen to the Lumineers. It was pretty sad. I drank IPAs. Yuck. Anyways, but it's more than apparent that Gen Z has rejected the traditional thinking of older generations when it comes to work, namely boomers. They don't have loyalty to just one employer. They demand more from their employers. They want a better work-life balance, and I say good. Fuck tradition, to be honest. It's just peer pressure from dead people. America is changing, and it's obvious Gen Z sees the amount of shit previous generations had to tolerate and says no thanks. 83% of Gen Z describes themselves as job hoppers. I'm a millennial, and over the last few years, I've changed jobs plenty of times. There's this old idea that if you work hard enough, your boss will appreciate you and eventually reward you with better pay or more benefits. A lot of younger people don't have time to wait for this, especially when they're competing with so many other people, and especially when they don't see what the point of working themselves to death just to increase the wealth of the company's executives. We'd rather just take our chances finding a workplace after a year or so that pays better and offers better benefits than hoping your dickhead boss cares that you stayed every late every night for a month. That fucker is probably doing coke and hanging out with ladies of the night in his high-rise apartment when you're on hour 12 of your shift trying to file the last of your reports for the week. Sure, it might look bad on a resume, and we all know how a lot of younger people are struggling to find work. You hear stories about how people are sending out hundreds of resumes to never get a call back. I have thoughts on that, but I'll share them later in this video. For those Gen Z that do find work and manage to stay employed, the story is different from previous generations. From an article by The Economist, in America, hourly pay growth among 16 to 24-year-olds recently hit 13% year-on-year, compared with 6% for workers aged 25 to 54. That was the highest young person premium since reliable data began. In Britain, where youth pay is measured differently, the average hourly pay of people aged 18 to 21 rose by an astonishing 15% last year, outstripping pay rises among other age groups by an unusually wide margin. In New Zealand, the average hourly pay of people aged 20 to 24 increased by 10% compared with an average of 6%. Strong wage growth boosts family incomes. A new paper by Kevin Corinth of the American Enterprise Institute, a think tank, and Jeff Larimore of the Federal Reserve assesses Americans' household income by generation and accounting for taxes, government transfers, and inflation. Millennials were somewhat better off than Gen X, those born between 1965 and 1980, when they were the same age. Zoomers, however, are much better off than millennials were at the same age. The typical 25-year-old Gen Zer has an annual household income of $40,000, more than 50% above baby boomers at the same age. I'm not sure if they factored inflation into that, but it's interesting, considering the way things are. And although Gen Z is making more money than previous generations, their attitude towards workplace is much different. From the same article, in 2022, Americans under 25 spent 43% of their post-tax income on housing and education, including interest on debt from college, slightly below average for under 25s from 1989 to 2019, bolstered by high incomes. American Zoomers' home ownership rates are higher than millennials at the same age. What does this wealth mean? It can seem as if millennials grew up thinking a job was a privilege and acted accordingly. They are deferential to bosses and eager to please. Zoomers, by contrast, have grown up believing that a job is basically a right, meaning they have different attitude towards work. Last year, Gen Zers boasted about quiet quitting, where they put in just enough effort to not be fired. Others talk of bare minimum Monday, the girl boss archetype who seeks to wrestle corporate control away from domineering men, appeals to millennial women. Gen Z ones are more likely to discuss the idea of being snail girls who take things slowly and prioritize self-care. The data support the memes. In 2022, Americans aged 15 and 24 spent 20% of their less time working and work-related activities than in 2007. The paper published by the IMF analyzes the number of hours that people say they would like to work. Not long ago, young people wanted to work a lot more than older people. Now they want to work less, according to the analysis by Jean Twang of San Diego State University, the share of American 12th graders aged 17 or 18 who see work as an essential part of life has dropped sharply. So, yeah, that's kind of, it's kind of apparent Gen Z works to live and doesn't live to work. That's perfectly fine. Some people might be confused by that, but I found a video I thought was very illuminating on the subject of why Gen Z is feeling burnt out from all the job searching they do. As I previously mentioned, you hear a lot of these stories out there about people spamming resumes. It might not be the best idea. We'll get into that in a minute. Let's check out this video. All right, this is the video in question. We'll watch a couple minutes of it. I thought it was very interesting.
Okay, so I just had the craziest thing happen to me in a job interview that's like ever happened to me. And I just had to share it because I'm sitting in my driveway. I just got home and I'm just like reminiscing on what just happened. And so I went to go interview for just like an office job, pretty simple full-time office job. And I had done a phone interview last week with this person, and they said, okay, well, we'd love to have you come in for in-person interview. And I was like, okay, great. So I come in, I get there like 5 minutes early. And when I go to, it's a lady, when I go to meet her, she's very like standoffish. Like she doesn't like me. And I have someone calling me, sorry. Anyway, like she didn't really like me, just kind of gave me a weird vibe. And I was very polite. I was like, hi, how are you? It's so good to meet you, everything. And she looks at me and she's like, your shoulders are showing. And I'm wearing a turtleneck and I'm wearing like a formal skirt. I had brought like a little blazer with me because it's like a little breezy outside, but it was hot in there. And like you can't see my bra straps or anything, like my shoulders barely showing. And she's like, I can see your shoulders. And I was like, well, I can put my blazer on. She's like, that's unacceptable workplace attire. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. And so I put my blazer on and like we did the interview. And I just noticed like a little bit of like weird commentary like slip out in between her. Like she's like, what would you consider like workplace toxicity? Like how do you handle drama? Like stuff like that, like really insignificant. I mean, I could understand like asking me like what are my leadership styles, like what do I look for in a company, what do I look for in like a manager, stuff like that. But the way she was asking it was like, how do I handle drama and gossip and stuff like that? So it was a little weird. And then, so we end the interview and she's like, what did she say? She said, we're still interviewing more candidates and I'll be in contact with you. I said, okay, great. Thank you so much for meeting me. And I go to like put my hand out to shake her hand, like, thank you for meeting me. And she goes, don't touch me.
Okay, that's a little bizarre. I've never had that kind of thing happen to me at a interview. It's been a while since I've interviewed. It's been a few years, but not that long. I mean, this is back in like 2020, like early 2022 is last time I went for a job interview. I've been at my place for almost 3 years now, but that's kind of fucked up, to say the least. The kind of bullshit people are dealing with these days. But let's get into the article a little bit. In an era where job applications are increasingly digital and hiring processes are streamlined, a new phenomenon has emerged among younger people. Job ghosting. A viral post on X, formerly Twitter, has sparked conversation after user Adila Razek questioned why Gen Z considers it normal to ghost potential employers. A Gen Z person explained to me why it's normal to ghost potential employer. Razek recently wrote, because people keep telling me it's normal, but I don't understand how it's normal for a generation to have basic courtesy. Razek's post quickly went viral with over 655,000 views and sparked conversation. Before long, people from Generation Z born between 1997 and 2012 started to respond on X, sharing their thoughts on Razek's post. Some suggested that job ghosting is not necessarily malicious, but rather the result of job application burnout. X user Dumbborks commented, could be they read it and forgot to reply. Not going to lie, applying for jobs can be exhausting. People could be sending out and applying to 50 to 75 jobs per day. Filling redundant forms and sometimes receiving an email can be overlooked during moments of burnout. User Drink Deliver added, I don't know how normal it is, but I think part of it is probably that Gen Z is overwhelmed by the job seeking process. When even post interview, we were told there's another stage of the process. I think I get disheartened. 3 or 4 interviews for an entry level job is a lot. I've had that before. Very rarely. Usually it's just for me, but I've been, in the job, I've been working for 20 years. So, but like for the kind of work I did, I don't really need multiple rounds of interviews. I can understand for some positions, but I've only had like multiple interviews a couple times. I didn't get either job, but I can understand that's very stressful. You go in, it's all stressful. You're trying to do a good job, trying to impress your employer. Then you gotta do it all over again. You gotta get it dressed up all over again and go through the same process trying to prove you're worth like some fucking shitty wage to some asshole HR douchebag. But user tolerate 2002 wrote Gen Z here. I mean it bluntly when we say we have no consideration. From the perspective of an individual with self-interest, we couldn't care less about how we treat you if we decided we aren't going to work for you. Everything is transactional to us, which is why we quiet quit. I also suggested that ghosting potential employers is part of a broader cultural shift in how Gen Z handles communication and relationships. This is how our generation approaches work relationships as well. Ghosting and gaslighting have all the more been normalized. We don't like confrontation. We don't deal with the problems head on. Instead, we run away from them. Okay, so we're getting kind of different perspectives here. But yeah, overall, it seems that Gen Z just isn't taking that amount of shit. But when they do find jobs, when they are working, they seem to be successful, as by the Economist article. But I can understand why a lot of Gen Z are just kind of burnt out with this kind of thing. It's not a good situation, really, for anybody, for employers or Gen Z. But times are changing, and hopefully Gen Z can this attitude people have, if we can get back to a point where employers actually need us and they're not just filling some quota and they're not doing all this bullshit, they're not going to jump through a million hoops, and there can be a healthy relationship between employers and employees, that would be great. But these days, everyone's just like, fuck it, I don't want to work at all, or I don't want to take any shit at all. And I guess I can understand where they're coming from with that shit. I sound like a fucking boomer talking about this shit, but I mean, we might be at an age where, the traditional ideals of work are just pretty much all gone. Gen Z is kind of standing at the forefront of that. So I say, good luck to the younger generations. It's a rough go of it out there. A lot of people are struggling, and there's a lot of bullshit reasons your employer will give you, as to not hiring you. There's all sorts of, I've gone through so many interviews, so much bullshit over the last couple decades. It's a fucking nightmare. It sucks, but people it seems like Gen Z just isn't taking the bullshit anymore. And I say, hey, that's good. Good luck to all you guys, honestly, because the landscape is shifting. Hopefully it benefits workers more. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys for right now. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts down below. Are you Gen Z? You can share some job hunting stories down below, and we'll just talk about that shit. I'd like to make more videos in this kind of vein, talking about the job market and whatnot, but because they get a lot of views. But yeah, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Ryan Little.